Okay, so let's just start. Thanks for coming along, Sean. Let's just start by asking about your background, because I know you've founded companies. You got Bubblecoin.
Yep.
You work for Blockchain, so you do a whole range of things. And you seem to have quite a wide, varied background, including stint in Vegas.
True. And I was VP of a website called NextSpace, which I'm sure everyone still uses nowadays.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, my friends joke that I've had 80 jobs. I typically don't stay anywhere for a year. I'm pretty transparent with my bosses and tell them that, and they still hire me for whatever reason. But yeah, I've done a lot, and to me, I don't know, life's short. I want to try everything once. Tech changes very fast, and so yeah, I've done a little bit of everything. I was a very crappy developer. It never really stuck with me. I was always sort of torn between being a developer and a designer, even though they're sort of at conflict with each other. And eventually I worked for someone who opened my eyes to marketing and what opportunities were in marketing and what money could be made there. And she was a big inspiration. And so I got rid of all the design and other junk I was kind of not really great at and focused on marketing specifically.
But what are you specifically attracted to Bitcoin? Have you
Yeah.
kind of found your way through Bitcoin, haven't you?
So I had a startup, and we raised money, and it was going well for a while. And like with most startups, we had hard times. The business was growing, but we couldn't raise more money. And so there's something in the startup world called the Series A crunch. And the Series A crunch basically means you got a round of seed funding, but you couldn't get a Series A, which is your next major round of funding. And so I was sitting in my business, running out of money. We were about 200 grand in debt. I had to lay off all my employees, and so it was just me and 2 or 3 other people trying to figure out what the hell to do. I had all these computers laying around from all the employees I had to let go, and I read about Bitcoin somewhere. And I probably should have been more focused on saving my business, but honestly, like, it was gone. Like, it was just, there was no saving it. And so I started making this machine mine. And to me, it was the technical aspects were exciting. I was a very early user of Napster, and it reminded me a lot about that. And so as one business was failing, I sort of saw this as a new world. And honestly, I was sort of disenchanted. It was an e-commerce site. I'd done the whole funding round, and I was looking for something new, and it just happened to be there.
Did you make much money mining?
So that's the funny thing is, like, I didn't
pay your 200 grand debt off?
So no, I didn't. So that was a business debt. I was in personal debt as a result as well because of the business. And so what's funny is I mined a lot of coins, and I didn't really keep them because at the time they were only worth $10. And so it wasn't really about mining the coins or doing that. It was just the money aspect. It was just, could I get it done? Because it was actually really hard to mine. Right. I had all these computers, opened them up, and was tweaking them and putting in new cards and doing all this different stuff. And so, no, it's funny, I didn't really make money on that, but I ended up buying a lot of coins at $100. And so I ended up selling enough of them to pay off all my debt. So, Bitcoin literally saved the family, got us moved up here. Instead of being in a hole, yeah, I used Bitcoin to basically pay, because as you know, it spiked up to about $1,100.
What did you sell it?
And so I sold it about that, but I'd also bought Litecoin for $1, and those peaked at about 35 or 40-ish at one point in time too. And so, yeah, I honestly didn't have any money, but I just was watching the charts. I just knew it was going to go higher. And so, yeah, I borrowed money, I sold some stuff, and I put together a few $1,000 to buy coin.
Okay, I think that's pretty amazing. Okay.
Or lucky.
Or lucky.
Yeah.
So my next question really is about 500 startups.
Sure.
So can I show the Bitcoin honey badger?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you have the embarrassing.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, my mom saw that. She's like, "You need to cut your nails." So that's a very motherly comment.
So I should qualify this.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Well, all I'll say, 500 startups is an accelerator.
They are accelerator and seed stage investor.
Fine.
Yeah.
And you've been recruited in as a Bitcoin honey badger.
Yes.
To bring in Bitcoin startups, I guess.
Correct. Yeah.
So, why don't you just tell us about that?
So the honey badger, if you haven't seen the viral video, which hopefully you all have, if not, go look at it afterwards. It's a funny video about it. It's basically a voiceover. The whole idea is honey badgers don't care. Honey badgers do whatever the fuck they want, and they are the honey badger. And Bitcoin is the honey badger of money. It doesn't care. It does what it wants. And so that's sort of a meme within the Bitcoin community. And 500 Startups is the honey badger of startups. They do a lot of things. They're very unconventional. They do a lot of things that most accelerators or other companies don't do. Right. And so when I told them about the meme in the Bitcoin world, yeah, the marketing guy basically just put my head on that guy, and there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what does 500 Startups do for Bitcoin startups that others don't?
Yeah, so the reality is no one really does anything for Bitcoin startups because it's so early. And so we had one Bitcoin company in our last accelerator called BTC Jam. That is the micro lending website where you can go and you can borrow or lend, Bitcoin.
Is this like Kiva?
It's just like Kiva, exactly.
So it's Kiva
Yeah,
Bitcoin.
it is. Except, it's less about investing into someone with a fruit cart and more about, I have a mining operation I want to build. So it's very Bitcoin specific for now.
Okay.
But the idea is, yes, providing, because in the rest of the world, getting credit is actually very difficult. I mean, it's hard here, but it's even more difficult. So on that site, you can actually build a credit rating based on some information you provide in your transaction history, like eBay or like Kiva as well too. So you sort of build that. So yeah, we've accelerated one company. I'm doing the next batch. I'm hoping to have 5 companies in the next batch. We typically accelerate about 30 companies per batch. And so, the hope is that'll be a fair share of the next batch that comes through. But the reality is, don't feel bad if you don't know anything. If you're new, everyone is new to Bitcoin. I don't want to stand up here and act like I'm an expert because I've been doing it for almost 2 years. I'm still learning a lot. And so, it's very early, and there's very little capital available for these companies, and so we're hoping to kind of change that. So through the accelerator and other investments, I hope to deploy $1 million this year into Bitcoin companies, basically 50 to 100 grand per pop.
Okay. Another company that you're involved in is Blockchain, which I think is the largest. Is it the largest Bitcoin company? The largest,
they are.
Most visited site?
The largest site with about 4 million visitors per month,
okay.
and the most wallets. They have 1.3 or 1.4 million wallets.
Okay, but they seem to have captured the whole market, as far as I can tell. So what's next for Blockchain? Where does Blockchain go? Or rather, what services does Blockchain have to offer Bitcoin community? What's coming out in the next few years?
Sure.
What do you have to offer the community in the next few years, given that you've kind of covered everything? Blockchain become the kind of de facto place, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's good to think of them as the Google of Bitcoin. They are the search engine of Bitcoin.
Okay.
You go to blockchain, you put in an address, and it tells you everything about that address. And so that was the primary reason. So
can we just see, do you understand what that means? Does anybody not understand how blockchain works? Has anyone been to blockchain? Who's gone to blockchain.info?
Few people. So basically, the nice thing about the Bitcoin protocol is everything is public in nature. So you can follow a transaction. You can see how much money is in every wallet if you want. That's how it was designed. So blockchain is sort of the web interface to that. It's basically a very large database, and this is the web interface to easily access it. So if you wanted to see what happened, if you want to see why was it taking so long to confirm, you could actually see more detail about it. Any transaction, every single transaction gets recorded there. It was started by one gentleman, his name's Ben Reeves. He's your typical sort of savant. He built everything. He built the website, the apps, he did all kinds of stuff, the wallet. He built a Tumblr, which allows you to sort of anonymize your coins. In terms of what's going on next, we're looking towards consumer adoption. And that's one reason they brought me on, because they're all very great at technical, they understand the technology and what Bitcoin is. Consumers don't, and it's actually very difficult to start with Bitcoin. You have to understand, two-factor authentication, encryption, and backing up your life and your wallet, basically. And that's not for the general consumer. And so we're trying to lower the bar and make it easy to understand.
So you have some consumer products coming out, maybe?
We do, and so Blockchain.info is it feels like a computer terminal. It's very sort of technical. We're going to launch Blockchain.com, which will be a consumer-facing, very user-friendly site. We acquired ZeroBlock, which is basically the world's most popular Bitcoin app. And if you use that app, you'll see the UI is beautiful. That's one thing that, when you have an industry that's very technical, the design typically sucks in every site. And most Bitcoin sites you look at, the design is pretty horrible. ZeroBlock is the outlier in that, where the design is very new, the UI is great. So we want to bring the sort of design and UI aesthetics to blockchain in the form of Blockchain.com.
Okay, so let me just, does anybody know what this is? I'm going to show you something else here now. This is a blockchain wallet for iOS.
That is the web version.
That's is that the web version?
Yeah.
Okay. And Apple recently pulled this off the App Store. I think they pulled all of them off the App Store.
Yeah.
So
we had kind of the last one though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's going on? I mean, what happens to people who've already had this and had Bitcoins on them?
Yeah, you still have it, which is nice.
Okay, so you don't lose your Bitcoins.
No, and you still have it. So I still have it on my phone. I have probably 2 coin in there. Same thing happened with Coinbase, who's another very large exchange. And we actually sort of anticipated it. And we were kind of wondering why it was still in the App Store, because they've gone after every other app and kicked them out. To be honest, I think they just didn't know. The other thing that was an advantage with our app is it didn't exchange fiat to Bitcoin. whereas Coinbase did. You can go into the Coinbase app and you can sell a coin or buy a coin. The thing with Apple, so blockchain is all about an open source, transparency. We release the source code for anything that's client facing. The iPhone app, everything was all open sourced. You could go down to GitHub and you could download the whole thing, steal it if you want. The reality is that's how Bitcoin is. It's the transparency and openness is important. Apple is the complete opposite. Apple is a walled garden. You have to play by their rules. They make very pretty things that work very well, but they're have a stranglehold on kind of what you can do. The other thing is it's very lucrative. The App Store itself and in-app purchasing is very lucrative for them. Right. So every time you buy the 99-cent upgrade in an app, Apple is getting 30% of that. And so we are transacting here, and obviously Apple can't take their cut. So we believe that that's one piece of it. They couldn't take their cut. At the same time, they've also filed patents to come up with their own form of digital currency. And so they're not going to do anything to help us become larger or to have a large base of users on their platform. And so it's sort of unclear. They also didn't communicate why they took it down. And so we tried. They didn't really give us any info. They gave us a generic answer. So we honestly don't know.
But it wasn't just you guys, it was everyone, right?
Yeah, but they'd already kind of gotten everyone else. Okay. But it was, there was one day, I mean, Bloody Sunday, I guess, where they just sort of wiped off the remaining few that were in there.
Okay. I mean, what do you think the impact will be, if they release their own currency, their own virtual currency?
I don't know. I think they'll probably screw it up, like they screw up a lot of stuff.
Okay.
You know, some things they do great, and other things they don't. I mean, social is a great example. There's a reason that you don't use the Apple Music social network. They're just not good at social. We'll see. I mean, it could have a very tight integration that makes it easy to use.
I mean, you also run BubbleCoin.
Yeah.
So do you want to explain what BubbleCoin is?
Yeah, BubbleCoin, it's a free app. It's basically like a news aggregator, and it's a chat room. There's a bunch of helpful links, videos. It's sort of an aggregator of all things Bitcoin. I built it because there wasn't anything like it, and that's what I wanted. And so I wanted something where I could open it up, I could see the price, I could see the news of the day. And so, yeah, it's a free app. They also denied that app because it linked to websites that were Bitcoin related. And so that's what they do. And so essentially what I did, you're recording this, aren't you? Well, what I did is I basically took down those pieces, resubmitted it, and then they approved it, and I just put it back in because I could do that without resubmitting it. But yeah, I mean, that just shows how strict they are about not wanting Bitcoin-related transactions in an app. Yeah.
My question was really what's the chat on BubbleCoin about this?
Yeah.
What's the community saying about this?
Yeah, so the community came out really strong, and so we talked to the press. We had a few press articles out there, and it just really took off. Basically, the community was up in arms and basically throwing away their phones. And there was one guy who made a video where he took his gun out and shot his phone. And so there was a lot of that. There's literally 100 videos of people destroying their iPhone in support of blockchain. It was basically the last straw, and they're switching over to Android, because Android is open. Android has never killed a Bitcoin app.
Right.
Google is very open to a certain degree, especially compared to Apple. So yeah, the community, I don't know, they were pissed. They don't want to be told what to do. A lot of people look at Bitcoin as a form of freedom, either financial or otherwise, and so they felt Apple was infringing on that.
Okay, well, on that point then, so you're probably going to, well, I'm not going to guess what you're going to say, but do you think Bitcoin's popularity is going to continue to increase? And is Bitcoin going to become the next world reserve currency? What's the end game here?
Yeah, it's a great question.
What's the end game?
So it's hard to say because we don't know how many people are using Bitcoin right now because of the nature of how everything is structured. The estimates are anywhere between 100,000 and 2 million. Some people say 7 million, but I think that's way off. So if you're thinking about 100,000 or a million people using Bitcoin today, worldwide, very, very, very small, tiny. Facebook has 1 billion users every month. So there's a lot of room to grow.
Right.
We've had 1 million wallets. People can make multiple wallets. You can generate wallets on the fly. So it's not a great metric. So it's very hard to figure out exactly how many people are conducting or holding coin today.
Right.
And so I feel that this year you will see 10 to 25 million people use Bitcoin. Following year we'll see probably 100 million. And then in the coming years beyond that, we will hit that billion point fairly easily.
Okay, so you actually believe it's going to hit 1 billion?
I do, because the technology can be used on any phone. And I think if you look to things like M-Pesa, which is another digital currency in Africa, it's almost the primary source of currency and trade for certain types of transactions. So yeah, there's 4 billion phones in the world. Yes, I think 1 billion is a very obtainable number within probably 5 years.
Okay. I mean, M-Pesa is used by 19 million, 20 million, is that right? That kind of thing?
Something like that. Yeah.
So it's actually quite.
So it's even larger than Bitcoin at this point.
Pretty
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe my final question really is, what do you think about, what about governments and regulation, and how's all that going to play out? Because, you know, I think it's illegal in Russia now, it's illegal in Thailand, but that's a bit silly. The US government have just come out in New York, I think last week, and said they're going to regulate it. But I don't know what that means exactly. I think the guy came out and said, we're going to regulate this thing somehow. So what do you think is going to happen in terms of regulation?
I think only oppressive countries, Russia or China, yes, they may make it illegal because they lose control and they like to have control. In the U.S., no. I mean, it's a free market. They want to encourage this. They probably see it as an opportunity. They want us to have this, but probably with guardrails to ensure that basically they're worried about drugs and money laundering, which, yeah, I think that's fine. I don't think you should be using this for drugs or money laundering. And I think that early adopters have, and that's sort of how it is because it was wild, wild west. So I think you'll see the U.S. will see this as an opportunity. They'll want to encourage the businesses to develop, and so that they will come and there will be some form of regulation. I feel it'll be this year. There'll be some tax guidance. That's the other challenge. What do I do with my taxes this year? I don't know. My accountant head's going to blow up and I have to try and explain what has happened. So yeah, I think this year we'll have some form of regulation, but also it's consumer protection is the big thing. And the credit card companies are deeply entrenched, but they also protect the consumer. You can charge back anything you want. That's not really good for the merchant though, because most people just charge back things that they just, because they're lazy or they were, you know, some other weird reason. So consumers do need protection. So I think that's what they're going to be also worried about as well.
Okay, Sean, thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions for Sean?
So I know Bitcoin at a high level, but I'm not an expert at all. I was always curious about like the competitive dynamics of digital currencies. Like you mentioned Litecoin, and there's Bitcoin. Like how, from an investment standpoint, like how do you gauge that? Like how easy or difficult is it to create your own digital currency? Sure. And like how does that factor into like Bitcoin's price, adoption, growth?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. A lot of people ask that. There's probably 100 or hundreds of digital currencies right now. I have my own that I screw around with my friends. So it's very easy to make your own. A lot of them, though, unfortunately, are sort of like pump and dump, where they get it out there, do some marketing, people finally put some money behind it, and then they just sell everything, and they cash out. So there's a lot of that going on. Litecoin is sort of attributed or talked about as the silver to Bitcoin, where Bitcoin is gold and Litecoin is silver. It'll be worth less. We feel at Blockchain, though, that there will be one winner. It is likely to be Bitcoin, just because of how it is. Also, when you think about it, there's no merchant adoption on those altcoins. Very few people take those other coins. A lot of people talk about, well, the other coins have other attributes that may be great. Litecoin, for example, has faster confirmations. But the reality is that Bitcoin is not a static program. It can be changed and updated throughout time. And so my feeling is all the currencies that have these little unique angles, they will be, that can be included within the blockchain code or within the Bitcoin code in the future.
So Bitcoin has specific attributes that make it popular. It's not just there were 100 of them and it just happened to sort of grow, and that growth basically was momentum driven.
It was, and there actually was a lot of coins even before this. There was a lot of digital currencies, and some were lived in games. I'm sure you've heard of Second Life. Yeah. That's a very robust economy that exists today. There was lots of other coins out there. Bitcoin just took off, and it was also that moment in Cyprus when everything happened there that just took it to the next level, took it out of this weird fringe cryptography type world and brought it to the mainstream. So yeah, a lot of that was driven by news. And yeah, the adoption has just been great. The confidence is there. It has the highest market cap, and you can buy stuff with it. There's a lot of merchants that accept it. That's not the case with everything else. Thanks. Becca?
Yeah, I think for the consumers to really adopt this or accept it, I think that chargeback is going to be the big play. Yep. How do you see chargeback working with Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think I'm biased because I've had merchant accounts, and it's a big hassle and it's a big expense. And so, to me, it's like, if you have an issue and you're a customer, call me and I'll take care of it. And if I don't take care of it, I'll have a bad business and people won't do business with me. If you just charge back, it's like, well, F you, I'm going to fight it now or make it hard for you, and I'm trying to get my money. So I believe that there'll be some solutions, though, that allow you to have escrow. And so that...
So you think it'll be an escrow?
I think there'll be some escrow services, especially for high-end or high-ticket items. Because, yeah, I mean, it's scary. Like, I've done a few transactions where it's like, that was a lot of money. Did it work? Did they get it? Like, it's really kind of scary. With a credit card, you feel like, well, this thing, I'm protected.
I mean, for consumer adoption, that's just going to have to be the key. I mean, there's going to have to be some chargeback system right now.
I think so, yeah.
I just don't see it being adopted by the consumer until that...
I don't think it'll be part of the code. I think because they want irreversible transactions. Yeah. That's really, that's hard-coded in there. But yeah, I think a merchant can come up, and Overstock is a great example. I guarantee that if you spent money with them in Bitcoin and you wanted to return it, they would take the return.
Sure.
They would probably refund you in a check, but who knows? Maybe they'll send you Bitcoin. I did have an instance where I paid for a hotel and I didn't realize that my blockchain had already paid for it, and so we double paid, and they sent me a check. And so hey, it took a week or two, but I did get my money back. So I think good merchants will always side with the consumer and try and help them. Bad merchants will get a bad name if they don't.
I hope you don't mind me asking about blockchain and their revenue sources.
Sure.
I know that from analyzing the features they have. And by the way, I'm a longtime user of Bitcoin. I founded the community in Vancouver, BC, brought in a Bitcoin ATM there, world's first, have my own Bitcoin startup, do development research for protocol, etc. So looking at the business model of blockchain, and this is just kind of a more generic question, I'm not going at blockchain, but I mean, in general sense, you have a business model of blockchain that one of their primary sources of revenue generation is through transaction sharing and this tumbling kind of idea that you talked about, where they generate a significant amount of revenue based on essentially a service that allows people to launder money. So I'm wondering about the implications for a company like blockchain for providing that kind of service. How do you migrate to a different business model? Do you attempt to comply with regulations offering that kind of service? Can a business adapt in this kind of space where there's a lot of illegal activity and the technology is being used for that? Can you roll it over into a more legitimate kind of business model?
Yeah, so I think with the tumbler, I mean, specifically, it's not for money laundering. It is for anonymizing your coins. It could be.
To money laundering.
But I could also want just additional layer of protection with my own funds, and I could use it. And so
blockchain provides a service. Like you can't do that in Bitcoin.
Yeah, like we're not going to give you US dollars for your bad coins.
You can do it with their service. Much more easy.
Yeah, but the other major source is from advertising. And so if you go in there and you look at the wallet, you'll see there's a lot of partners there. And Gift is one of our biggest partners, GYFT. And so I can't disclose exactly how much they pay, but it's a very large ad deal. Because what we're doing is they're looking for people that want to spend Bitcoin in their credit cards, their gift cards basically. And so we're sending them a steady flow of traffic. And so to them, it's a great customer acquisition tool. It's actually the best customer acquisition tool, for getting a Bitcoin user too. So a site like Blockchain has the advantage where they do have so much traffic where they can actually offer advertising as a service as well. We feel the wallet should probably always be free. That should be a free service. The future of tumbling, yeah, you're right. A regulation could come out and say that that's not legit and you can't do that. And so, probably they'll revisit that at that time. I don't have a ton of experience with that in particular. Obviously it was developed and built, way before I joined. I've only been there for 2 months. But yeah, I think in the end, it'll be services that either are, advertising based, customer acquisition or lead generation is also very strong, and companies will pay a lot of money for that. And so, just like if you're Visa, what if Visa sends people, they sell your information every day. I mean, every time you sign up for a credit card, your information is sold the next day. And so, there's a power in having the wallet, there's power in having access to these customers who are looking to spend Bitcoin.
Do you mind if I follow that question?
Yeah,
up, if anybody doesn't mind? And this is more about, in general, Bitcoin tech. I'd like to get your perspective on it, being that you're inside of the business kind of side of a major player in the Bitcoin space. But when you look at technology like Bitcoin, specifically the protocol and the implementation of client software, there are a lot of kind of missing pieces in a lot of ways that limit it from actually functioning properly. And I kind of tell people that Bitcoin's in a beta stage at the moment. And literally, if you wanted the whole world to come onto Bitcoin, it would break. It wouldn't work.
Can you give us some examples when you say missing pieces?
Sure.
What are you talking about?
Like the issue this week.
Yeah, malleable transactions is one. Essentially, you can post a transaction to the Bitcoin network and then change the transaction subtly afterwards.
I was just going to come on to this, so you've kind of taken us onto our next.
So maybe this is a great client for you.
You're telepathic.
Yeah, there's a few things in the protocol. So it's kind of like, do you want to promote the technology as the next be-all, end-all, and thinking that Bitcoin is going to be the single major player, or do we need to really look at engaging the tech community, where a lot of the better minds in terms of development for this kind of technology would exist, and engage them in the next version? I'm sure you're aware of a couple of the more prolific projects that are focusing on next gen.
Yeah, like the Ethereum.
Right?
Yeah, so I think that, I think it's a great point, and you're right. That's why I feel that consumer adoption is 10 million people this year. That I don't think will break the network. So to me, I'm focused on trying to get ready for that, to try and get companies ready for, and one, to develop the ecosystem through investing, and then also to help blockchain get ready for these customers to come and to service them. But yeah, you're right. I mean, yeah, it's like this thing this week was actually, that was a big concern, and the price almost dropped in half as a result. And you're right, it is. But the nice thing, like we were talking about with the other altcoins, the technical people on there, very smart, but there's a very small group of them. There's only, the core developer team is very, very small. But it's one reason why blockchain and engage with me is because they do want a presence in Silicon Valley. And I think that, yeah, some of the best programmers are here in Silicon Valley. Unfortunately, many of them are building photo apps and fart apps and other stuff that just don't mean, and secret, and just things that really have no value to mankind. And so at some point, yes, I'd love to steal them and put them on a Bitcoin project, and do something a little bit more meaningful with them types. Same thing in New York. You have a lot of people that are in the financial tech. The New York tech scene has been trying to take financial developers for a long time, but the skill set's not a match. If you're coding a Bloomberg terminal, you don't know how to code in Python and some other type of web, or do front end. Whereas Bitcoin, it's financial tech. And so, yeah, I think that we'll actually see probably developers in New York latch onto it faster than we see out here. Here, they are obsessed with sort of the new shiny thing. And thankfully, this is starting to become that, but only in the last month or two. But yeah, I would love to steal great developers from Facebook, from Google, from any company, and get them on the project.
Exactly. So, and thank you just for answering that, and especially kudos on the 500 startups.
Yeah, thank you.
That's exactly what we do.
But yeah, that's what we want to do. We want to incubate and accelerate and help this. It's a very, very new ecosystem, and so yeah, it's going to need a lot of people, a lot of help, a lot of support from everything, and that's financials. There's not a lot of great executives in there as well too. They need some executive help, and to build these businesses and make them long-standing. Yeah, good question.
Can I just ask, to most of you, we'll come to that question, know that Bitcoin's currently under attack. There's a kind of loophole, or there's delay before the transactions are, it's a 10-minute delay, is that right?
Yeah, or they have to resubmit things, and,
right.
And yeah, there was a small exploit, and someone's taking advantage of it, or many people are. Yeah.
Right, but they're kind of messing the blockchain up. They're not actually stealing Bitcoin.
They're not. It's still safe.
It's a distributed denial of service attack. The idea is to stop the blockchain functioning. They can't steal money, but they can stop it running, and they've completely knocked the price of Bitcoin down.
Yeah.
It's like 570. $500 bucks?
Depends what exchange you look at.
Sure,
yeah,
like 500-ish.
600-ish.
But it was sort of 800-900-ish.
Yep.
So,
But I mean, it's hard to say what their motives are. I mean, my first guess would be, well, now they're going to go buy a lot of Bitcoin, and then as things go back up, they can sell and have a profit.
quite possible.
Yeah.
I mean, Bloomberg had this thing which says the glitch that will help kill Bitcoin. So do you think this is going to kill Bitcoin?
No, I don't think so. I think the community is still resilient enough and they can fight back, and then it'll force them to move a little faster on some of these updates. It's been a known issue actually since 2011, I believe, when it was first exposed.
Right. So no big deal.
No, I think, like I said, it's like a living document. It'll be updated and changed, and it'll adapt. The network is very strong.
Okay. Should we take in just the last question?
How about secondary markets? There have been some sort of half attempts at mining bonds, which are really stocks, with some moderate success. We don't really see a derivatives market yet. Maybe the volume's not there. Any vision for a timeline for that? Will it help reduce some of the volatility? You know, what's in the pipeline? What can we expect in terms of more sophisticated instruments?
Yeah, I'm not sure, and I'm not in finance, I'm in marketing, so I don't even understand that exactly how that whole world works. But I do know that you want to be careful when you have unaccredited investors running into new markets, because they tend to lose their money, and it tends to be money they can't lose. Investors can lose money, and that's part of the game. There was the first IPO of a public Bitcoin company this week, but it was a reverse IPO. And as you know, like reverse IPOs are a little strange. They work, but they're not always on the up and up. And there are companies that have done IPOs in Bitcoin where you have bought shares or bought equity in the company. But once again, I think those are not experienced investors that are buying that, and they're likely to get burned. And I think ASIC Miner was one of them, which was sort of a mining pool, and you could buy equity in the company, and then you would get payouts as a result. And that worked for a very short period of time. So I think it's still too early for any of that. There's even for investors, there's no M&A. There's been 2 or 3 acquisitions in the entire space. So for all that type of liquidity, yeah, it's probably too early.
Okay, sure. Thank you. I'm going to call it there. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thanks. guys. Well, that was, and that actually